personally believe within 5 years, there will be no Taiwan issue. We'll resolve that. Nobody can stop China.
Okay, today I'm gonna show you guys a video from Professor Jin again, but in this podcast, he's speaking in perfect English. So I guess it saved me some time since I don't have to translate it. And it's regarding Taiwan. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to roll the video, but break it into sections, which I will give you some of my take on it and draw a conclusion at the end. Let's go.
In the past 3 days, you may know in Singapore, there is a so-called Shangri-La Forum. And many people noticed the first day of this year's forum, in the May 31st, the two ministers, defense ministers, met together, right? One is Defense Minister Austin from US, and another is Mr. Dong Jun from China. I think the media pay a lot of attention to this high-ranking meeting. Many people noticed during the dialogue between these two defense ministers, Taiwan issue is a very hot issue, very prominent issue. Mr. Dong Jun from Chinese side made it very clear, Taiwan is the real red line of China. Taiwan separatists and some people from outside the world, if they want to play the card of Taiwan, they're going to counter back from China. In recent months, people who pay attention to Taiwan issue should notice that this issue become hot again. And the very important reason is that Mr. Lai Qingde, he delivered inaugural speech, right, in May 20th. In that speech, his position is very provocative to mainland China. He stressed on his point is that Taiwan and mainland China separated. Taiwan is a sovereignty. That's go beyond the bottom line of Beijing. That provocative gesture made Beijing very angry. You see some measure taken by Beijing. One is military exercise surrounding Taiwan. Another is some economic punishment and medium critics. And under this background, Lai Qingde not stepped back. He's still very tough. And behind him, some US politicians give him a support. So that makes the situation around Taiwan really dangerous.
Okay, for people who watched my video last week and a week ago, I mentioned this dramatic change in Chinese government's attitude towards Taiwan. I know there are people who just think that it was a clickbait video, and I know many of my audience, even the ones that have agreed with me most of the time in my channel, they think that China would just wait and will not act hastily. And what I try to explain that the notion of peace has fundamentally changed since President Lai's speech. And whether you guys watch the speech or not, and what you guys think about the speech does not really matter. At the end, it is how China and the Chinese government think, and it was on the extreme side. And so I see China is taking concrete steps right now towards a unification war. And Professor Jin here has shown to you guys in English just how severe the consequence is regarding that speech, okay?
As you may know, Taiwan is part of China and traced back to many years ago. If you're interested in Chinese culture, you should know the story of three kingdoms. Right? In Chinese, we call it the 三国演义, the game of three kingdoms. And one of the kingdom is so-called Dongwu. And the leader of Dongwu, called Sun Quan, at that time, he sent his general ship to Taiwan and claimed the sovereignty of Taiwan. So this claim of sovereignty can trace back to nearly 2,000 years ago. But in modern history, because Qing dynasty defeated by Japan Empire in 1894, so-called 甲午战争. The war occurred in 甲午 year. So Taiwan separated 50 years to Japan Empire. But after the end of Second World War, Taiwan back to China. The later time of Second World War, there is a so-called Cairo Declaration signed by 3 leaders of the world at that time. One is Franklin Roosevelt, the President of the United States, and Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and Mr. Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the Republic of China at that time. According to Declaration of Cairo, the Cairo Declaration, the Japan Empire must retain all the territory they seized from China. So that's the very important document with international law impacts. And 2 years later, in the famous Boston Protocol, fully 100% accept the stance of Cairo Declaration. That means the Boston Protocol ordered or required the Japanese Empire to retain all the territory, including Taiwan, back to China. And as you may know, in the August 15th, 1945, the Emperor of Japan Empire at that time, they fully accept the requirements of Boston Protocol, right? So from the perspective of international law, Taiwan back to China in 1945. Later on, Taiwan separated with mainland China, not because the invasion of other country, not because of the impact of international law, but because civil war. You may know, between 1946 to 1949, in China, we have a very tragic situation. At that time, the 2 major parties, one is the Communist Party of China, one is Nationalist Party of China. They fight each other. We fell into a civil war. And the result of this civil war is that Kuomintang, the so-called Nationalist Party of China, they fled to Taiwan. Then leads to the separation of Taiwan with mainland China until today, right? So basically speaking, now Taiwan and mainland China separated for a while because civil war is a result of civil war. And both sides, during when Kuomintang ran in Taiwan, both sides declared they represent the whole China. But in recent years, when DPP, Democratic Progressive Party of Taiwan, came into power, they changed their attitude. They changed their political position. They tend to legally separate Taiwan from whole China. That's something not acceptable from Beijing's perspective. So that's why in recent years, the relations across Taiwan Strait become very unstable. But up to date, the leaders in Beijing, their position looks like this. China will be unified, but Beijing side put peaceful unification on the very top. Although mainland China owns obvious military advantage, Beijing now owns the choice of use of force to unify China. But up to date, the leaders in Beijing still put peaceful unification on the very top, right? So that's the main reason why although the cross-Taiwan Strait relations has problem, but the situation around the Taiwan is still quite peaceful.
Now, regarding to this history part, I don't think the historical claim of Taiwan over 2,000 years ago, that was not that strong of an argument, let's put it that way, at least not internationally. But then Israel is making that same claim, isn't it? And Putin is also tracing things over centuries. So for China, I think that is more for domestic consumption. But again, to me, that's not carrying that much of a weight. Now, the next one, the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Declaration, those are the two most important historical claim, I would say, that China holds on, its claim over Taiwan. And it is one that all the countries around the world totally agree with, at least officially right now. So today, there's not a single country on this planet that see Taiwan as a separate country right now, at least by law or by recognition. The next important information he said here is that for a long time, the government of both Taiwan and mainland China see there's only one China, and Taiwan belong to that one China. The difference is just how and when the unification may occur in the future. And it has been one of the key factors maintaining peace and interaction between Taiwanese island and mainland China. And that has been challenged right now. I think there's no sensible person in Taiwan who think that Taiwan and its government can still launch an invasion war of mainland China and reconquer the whole China. Now, what is going on and have been going on for a while now is that there is force that seek to make Taiwan independent from China, who's in action right now. And this force is backed by US, according to China, which is more or less accurate, yes. So what it is this US funded NGOs in Taiwan and work with this separatist to promote the idea of Taiwan being an independent nation already. It need to seek independence, demonizing China, changing the textbook narrative, altering the media narrative, and many other things. Now, I don't want to go into the details regarding which recent event were conducted by some CIA or some other forces from US to manipulate towards a certain objective. But let's just say there's independent movement entities in Taiwan and it's backed by US. So even the most pro-Taiwan independent audience of mine can agree on that, right? There's no argument there. To say US has nothing to do with pro-Taiwan independent movement is like saying Biden and Hunter Biden and US has nothing to do with what is going on in Ukraine. And I mean, I have dozens of Ukrainians sending me emails and we're in conversation, but not even them can deny, U.S. involvement in Ukraine since 2008. It's just a fact. So how you guys want to interpret it, that is another matter. Let's continue.
Taiwan separatists with Lai Qingde, but with very recent political change in Taipei, Lai Qingde, who publicly claimed his Taiwan separatists came into power, then the situation now facing some danger. And make things worse is that although Taiwan issue basically is an internal issue of China, because as I mentioned, it's a result of the civil war. But at the very beginning, the United States involved in China's civil war. During the civil war between 1946 to 1949, U.S. backed Kuomintang, backed the Nationalist Party of China, right? So to some extent, the U.S. involved in China's civil war. And after Kuomintang fled to Taiwan, the U.S. gave full support to Taiwan, including military support. So that makes the situation very complicated. Legally speaking, Taiwan issue is an issue of Chinese internal affairs. But because this historical reason, the U.S. is a party involved in this game. And on U.S. side, I think the quite high percentage of U.S. strategy want to play the card of Taiwan against mainland China. Although the U.S. side still promise to so-called one China policy, they give the cheap lip service every day. They said we were loyal to one China policy, but their behavior betrayed their promise. The behavior is to encourage Taiwan to separate. So that makes the leaders in Beijing in a very awkward situation. As I mentioned, Beijing determined to unify the whole China. That's a promise to the whole nation. On any circumstances, Beijing will not give up this stance. We will unify the whole China. Now the new situation in Taiwan in US forced Beijing authority to give more serious consideration of a non-peaceful unification. So that makes the situation looks much more dangerous than before.
Now, he emphasized more on this US involvement in Taiwan. Again, this is the kind of polarized subject, I would say. I don't want to keep repeating myself. I can just say that I have a reasonable understanding of US global strategy, what a unipolar world truly means. And this can be confusing for people from perhaps Europe because they are not always on the receiving end of US imperialism, at least not until recently, I would say. But it is a totally different magnitude to the rest of the world, okay? I mean, what example can I really give here? For example, Donald Trump. There are, as many people can see, there are hidden forces, all right, who do not want Donald Trump to become president in 2024. We can all see that a little bit, right, with all the lawsuit and stuff. And it's placing a lot of obstacle to prevent Donald Trump to become a president in 2024. Imagine someone like Donald Trump now is running for president in Iraq. Say something like, I want to make Iraq great again. I guarantee that there will be a Sidewinder missile on top of his head within 12 hours. And Pentagon will declare we just killed another Iranian-backed terrorist or something like that. So there's this illusion of what democracy looks like in the West, in US and Europe. Even if it is in some kind of decaying form, it is still not bad, right? And that is a legitimate statement, by the way. But it is horribly naive, I would say, to think that this is how democracy works in the global South, because democracy often were used as a tool, an instrument for Western imperialist colonialist power, and some of the tactics are quite brutal. Brutal is an understatement here. I was asking in my previous video to my audience what they think about China. Is China a threat in Southeast Asia? And I asked, do they really want to have more US involvement in Southeast Asia? And I remember I have a bunch of Indonesians who come to my comment section and say something like, well, we don't want to get too close with China, because then US will come and regime change us again, and it will cause death and destruction and economic chaos. I'm not kidding. And it's not even one Indonesian who said that, it's many. You ask a European, they are like, what are you talking about, right? You ask Indonesian, it's like semi-built into some of their brain. I don't know, is it majority or is it just the Indonesian who commented in my comment section? But I would say that if you go ask Central Americans and South Americans what US did to them for, over 100 years to keep them kind of semi-subordinate, I bet every Central South Americans understand more or less what these Indonesians are talking about when it comes to, Americans interfering with their democracy and their sovereignty. But if you talk to, again, like the collective West, there are people who are very confused, and it's like living in parallel universe. And even I would say even the logic is sometimes wrong. It's this kind of, how do I put it? You don't get to tell me how you feel, okay? I know how you feel better than you know how you feel yourself. So, and my version is the correct one. So this kind of projection is very, very odd, I would say. But I think Europeans is also getting a feeling of that right now as well. Obviously, it's not the US who blew up Nord Stream. Nonsense, right? It's the god of democracy. Or, fantastic opportunity, something like that. Let's continue.
As all know, this year, 2024, is the general election year of United States, right? And compared to previous election, this year the partisan politics is really get worse, right? Democrats, Biden side, they legally sued the former president Donald Trump, and put Trump in a very dangerous situation. On the other side, the Republican side, quite a lot, the Republican supporters become more and more enthusiastic to support Donald Trump. So the split of partisan politics really get worse. Whether this election can end in a peaceful way, we don't know. As for the result, from Chinese perspective, there is no substantial differences between the two candidates. As for Taiwan, I think no substantial differences. Both of them will play the card of Taiwan. So both of them will lead to this result that they will force our leader in Beijing to make the decision in the near future. I personally believe within 5 years, there will be no Taiwan issue. We'll resolve that. Nobody can stop China. So because we will resolve Taiwan issue by use of force, that means there will be no one state, two system. No arrangement like Hong Kong. Just one state, one system. So that will be the result. So Taiwan people looks funny. They refuse the one state, two system arrangement, right? That means finally they can only face in one fate, one state, one system. I think that's will be the future end.
Okay, now this is his closing statement, right? At the end here, he talked about US election, and to be honest, it won't matter much, just like he said, because Republicans is more hawkish against China. And the only thing China gamble regarding the election could be that they want to see a more destabilized US political system before, China make a move. That might be what they are waiting for. And again, Professor Jin here seems very confident that there won't be a next Taiwan election. And regarding the one country, two system, I will say that it is still possible. It will be good to at least maintain a certain electoral system in Taiwan, even if the power is limited, to have this illusion of democracy, very important for lowering the tension after the conflict and to reach a certain harmony in society. So I think there's still a chance. I want to draw my own conclusion here because I make several videos in the past regarding Taiwan, and I brought different guests here to show you guys different opinions, but I never really gave my own opinions directly, and I guess I will do it in this video. I will layer my thoughts out so people don't get confused, okay? Now, in a perfect world, I will lean or prefer Taiwan to be independent or not unify with China, at least for the time being. I think unification actually serves as a destabilizing element rather than a stabilizing element, but that's in a perfect world, okay? With no great power competition, no security competition, no financial colonialism and all that, none of those. just a bunch of countries working together to make the world a better place, all the liberal education I've received here in California. I grew up next to the Apple and Google headquarters in Cupertino and Mountain View, so I know that area very well, and I still have a lot of friends there. Lovely place, but expensive nevertheless. But like I said, that is a perfect world, okay? So my point here is we're not in a perfect world. That's a fact. There are great power competition, very severe tension right now between China and US. In that case, I think the best choice for Taiwan is a peaceful unification with China as soon as possible. If Taiwan accept a peaceful unification, I honestly think life won't be that much of a difference in Taiwan. US will probably turn around and place sanction on Taiwan in that case because you're with China now and you're no longer an ally or proxy. Chinese government will try to balance that with more favorable policy towards Taiwan to make sure that Taiwanese don't suffer too much under Western sanction. That's how I feel. That's what I prefer, knowing the reality of the situation. However, all right, the chance of that happening is very low, close to zero, very low, I'll say. Yeah. That is the most preferred option for Taiwan according to my perspective only. You can think whatever you want. But how I predict according to the reality of the situation is that most likely outcome is that there will be some kind of a unification by force, okay? And this prediction comes from me accepting the reality of the situation in Taiwan today, accepting what Taiwan is today and accepting what US and China is today, all right? At the end, it's one of those, how do I put it? The blue pill and the red pill moment is what we are facing right now. And this is a red pill channel, I would say. I don't want to waste too much time with audience who only want to take the blue pill. My time is precious and your time is precious as well. So for people who are too frustrated with the things that I say here, go out and enjoy your time with your friends and family and, hug them, kiss them, give them a good life. Geopolitics is sometimes a headache. It's not everyone's cup of tea. That's all I have to say. Oh, one more thing. Do you guys think Professor Jin's English is good enough? If so, maybe I can work on getting him onto a podcast with not just me, but perhaps with someone like John Mearsheimer. Because I consider Professor Jin to be like a Chinese version of John Mearsheimer. So we can have two Mearsheimers, debating each other regarding the future of Taiwan. Would that be interesting? If you guys like that to happen, you need to press the subscription button and press more like and support me. And maybe I can work towards that end. And I'll see you guys in the next video.